Hello, fellow creators. Welcome to this channel of mine. And today we're gonna be, discussing the a bit more advanced scenarios for the libraries that we have got introduced to in the previous part of this video. So let's dive in. So from the previous video, you already have a form which has two components. One is a text field and another number field that are wired with the form schema and are helping us to create a nice kind of a structure around form for our React app, right? So if we just kind of give a quick glance to what we have developed so far is, we have imported the peer dependencies. We have used TS React form as the main dependency for your app. And then we have created two custom components for our form controls. Let's explore the very first concept that this library brings to the table, which is the type-safe props. And type-safe props are nothing but a way to kind of provide values or properties to your components, the custom components you have created, like the text field component or the numeric field component, in a very controlled manner. Like type props is a way or the mechanism you use to pass on the different props that your custom component expects, right? So far we have just this component text field which doesn't expect any properties at all, right? But what if you wanna kind of give a few other properties to this component, like say that we have this span over here, and if it needs a label that we can show alongside the form control, then how do we pass this? So currently, if you need to give this label will just kind of come here. It will place itself, but this isn't a dynamic manner of applying properties to a component that is rendered all through configuration, right? So what you would basically do is you would create an interface, right? Let's call it text field props. Cool. And give it a label, right? That's what type safety is all about, having interfaces all around that validates the shape of the properties your component receives, right? And we can use this value over here, right? Once we have this value available, then this value can further be leveraged to dynamically render this portion of your component with something like props dot label. Yes, it is there. We'll go ahead and we'll just IntelliSense props label or an empty value, right? But how do you receive this? So for that, this library ships with something called, let me just look at the documentation. So it gives you props, right? So I was going just right about this. Give it an object notation, give it another object, and within this you provide the name of the component that you have used, right? So what is our component called, right? It's called name, right? Name is the name that we have used for this particular component in a schema. And what we'll do here, we'll pass it an object, and over here we'll give it the value, which is the label, and this could be full name. So the TS form knows what each of your mapped components expect. Similarly, if you are repeating this multiple times, what you would basically do is you will just duplicate this, right? Let's make it something like an address for now. Okay, this is a string. Minimum could be 10. Message could be required. We're just doing a simple validation. And over here, we don't need to repeat this, right? Because we have already told a form struct or eventually the React TS form library that whenever it's a string, you've got to use the text field component, right? So we can just come here You can see we are getting a proper intelligence on this one, and proper hinting that there is some mess up that happened, right? So here we can just come and give it the label, right? Level could be address, right? So now you have a really reusable structure, right? You just need to modify the schema and provide the actual values. If you see this in action, you have another label over here called address. You can provide the name here, aftab. Address could be the world, okay, or the YouTube, right? Looks good. 13 submit. We have all the values available here. So as you can see, this leads to a lot of convenience in how you manage the schema for your form, how you pass on the props and all. So the name and address fields, we have removed or done away with the age field. The name and address fields use the same kind of component at this point. What if you have a bit of different requirements, right? Uh, so the best way to go about this, and what the React TS form library offers you, is you can have something called unique naming or unique ID detection to prevent against this sort of schema collisions, right? And the way we go about this is when we are defining our schema for the field. Let's say we have address, right, and we want to give it a bit different shape than the name field. What we do here is we'll use something called create unique field schema, right? And this schema field will associate a unique ID with this address field, right? So let's see how this works, right? So let's call it const address field schema. What it expects as a first parameter is again the same type, right? Because it's another variant or version for your string type. So you'd give it um, z string again, because it's like another view for your string zod type, and then you'll give it a unique id, unique id here. This could be anything unique, right? When we are using this particular schema, where we're defining the schema, we'll have to place it as address world schema. Take this all and place it over here, so that we still have create schema. It's not imported, so let's just import it. Address field schema is now defined, and when we are actually mapping this field, what we'll have to do is, instead of using this address field schema, we'll have to tell the form structure not available here, as we haven't created the custom component yet, right? But we can use the same text field, right? It says block address field schema used before declaration, which is all right. So let's just move this or shift this to the top before this one. Okay, TypeScript is all happy now, and let's just see the effect here, right? Same thing, no change, same components, right? So definitely it's not expected to kind of look or behave differently. But now what we can do is we can create another text field for this one, and let's call it modified text field. And for now, let's just change the color to something like 900 text bold. Okay, we'll leave it like this only, and let's just use this component with our map, right? Did you notice any change? Let's just reload. So the change might be there, but it's not that obvious. Let's do something that will be more popping for this one. BG cool gray. Okay, text yellow. Not a great color choice or not a great color combination, but let's see just the effect here. You see the magic over here, right? The color is something that won't work because it's not a usual div, but the text is already working. So here's what you can do when you have a unique ID associated with the same zot type, but for different components you want a different sort of a layout. So this covers the second great thing this library offers besides the type safe prop passing. So far we have learned how React.js form library help us with kind of creating kind of auto generating form controls, how it can help us with type safe props passing, and how it can also help with collisions when we want to use different controls for the same zot type. Now let's see how it helps us to work with optionals Jod schema types, right? So if you look at the current schema that we have created for Zod, we have a name field that takes a string value with a minimum criteria for having one minimum character, and then we have an address field which is again using the same control, and it's again just we have took a shortcut here and we have just used a text field for now. What if we want to support an optional prop here, right? So in the documentation you'd see that there is a kind of a optional email key which is shown as a kind of a property that this schema accepts, right? So let's just copy and paste this and understand how this is going to work for us, right? So if we have this optional email field, let's call this optional for now. So this is optional by behavior, not by the key. So it takes a string, it is of email type, and it can be optional, right? So what this library will do is it will look at the core type that this property is mapped to, which is again a string. So it will try to apply the same the type that we have used for this one, which is a text field, right? So even if you have option property, you're gonna be getting a text field rendered for this email value. Let's just save this and see it in action. Yeah, that's gonna happen because we haven't passed any value for this field. Label is email, right? And type is text, right? It's an email field. We are entering an email. This is our email value. And if you go ahead and type the value for this one, now if you go ahead and type value for this one, again the same thing, lorem ipsum dollar seat. Who cares if lorem is typed well? And then we can just add the value here, which could be something like after invalid email, right? Alam 13, it worked, right? We have the value, right? So as you can see, the same type can be used multiple time as long as you have the core criterion satisfied, which is string, right? As long as you have a string available, whether it's a mandatory property or it's an optional property, you'll have the same control being leveraged for it. So we have seen now how type-safe passing works, how this library helps us with optional, schema properties. Now let's see more advanced structures. So if you see, and if you come back to the schema that we have defined so far for us, you'll see we have an address field, right, which is a really simplified version of our address field. In real scenarios, you won't ever have a text field to just contain, the entire set of kind of fields that address kind of a form control could demand, right? It could have address line 1, address line 2, zip code, city, state, right? So you see, right, you have at least 5 control necessary for to represent something like an address, right? Because it's a complex data structure, right? So let's see how this library helps us with complex data shape needs, right? Let's do away with this for now for simplicity's sake and do away with this. Let's just make sure that this goes away. Name schema, it's all kind of optional. Looks like it requires a reload. No problem. So I have done this reload, and let's see how this library helps us with the complex data type. So for complex field type, as you can see, you can use the same format, right? Like a modified text field. You have this modified text field, which is just kind of a duplicate version of the text field. For this complex data structure need, let's just rename it to address field. Okay. Let's just come here and make it address field. No problem. We have just renamed it. Everything will just work. But this data structure is complex, right? So the schema won't be just a string field. So we'll just customize this one to have a bit more complexity accounted for, right? As we can see here, the address field is having a street and a zip code. So if you just take this example and copy and paste it, it will be something like this, right? This is your address field schema, right? A street and a zip code. True field at this point. Okay. And wherever this structure or shape is encountered, address field would be used, right? So the data shape or the data factors are accounted for, but the control is just not there yet to support two fields, right? So we'll have to customize the field too, right? For that, what we can do is this field that we are having gives us this field value and on change. It also gives us a way to access different values, right? So we can have value accessed here, right? And value will contain values declared, but value is never used. Value does not exist on type. Why that's a case? It's a case because the shape is a string, right? It shouldn't be. Z infer type of the shape is the address field schema, right? Address field schema, right? But if value does not exist on type, error on message. How come? Type of address schema. The schema is all right. Field value error is all right there. Now value, I was trying to access it from the wrong place. The value is available with the field only, as you can see it here, right? But now we have the actual object being passed here, right? So this could be the street, and similarly we'll have another one for the, since we have used the street here, we'll have to duplicate this structure for the zip code, right? So let's just duplicate this one. Okay, I know Let's just create one single fragment annotation around it here, and now we have two fields, right? The two fields, the problem with my dictionary app. So we have now two fields accounted for here. This could be our zip code, right? When the value is changing, this structure won't work anymore, right? We'll have to use everything we are getting out of the value, right? Because it's a complex structure, it's not a scalar value, right? So field value, you got to spread it, uh convert this on change. This is on change, right? And on change will have another on change within it, right? So the structure for this on change will be kind of this. All the field values, not just value, right? Field value. And then for the zip code, we'll use the target value, which is coming right out of and this isn't the usual on change, this is field on change, right? This structure needs to be repeated for this one also. So let's just do this zip. We already did it for zip, so this will be street. The target value, field value street is right already. Something we won't be able to just use right away will be, since it's a complex field, right? So we'd be required at least two levels for two form controls, right? So let's just create another version of this text field props, which is going to be used for the address field props, right? Address fields, address field prop, right? Label, like, let's change it to label street and then label zip code, right? Two levels. We don't want to rely on the control type anymore because we are totally controlling what the control type is going to be. This is going to be for our street, so this is props label street over here, and similarly props label zip code, TypeScript is all happy now. The final change that would be required to do is around the errors, right? So we won't be able to use the generic version of error anymore, right? So we'll have to rely on more fine-grained error controls. So we have error for street, error message, and then we'll have another one for zip code. All good. Now this address field is all ready to receive custom and complex structures, right? Come over here, we change the type. So let's just make it label street, and label street is going to be just street, and label zip code is going to be just zip. We'll do away with this one as it's not needed anymore. TypeScript is all happy about this. Let's just save this and see our current structure, right? So let's just type the name. Street. A street could be any street, and zip could be 12345. Submit it. It's all working. Why not? No problem. No problem. But if I won't submit this, there would be, because we put a requirement there, right? So it's necessary to be there, and we have the value available here in a structure, right? Street and zip code are currently empty. Street zip code 12345, and there you have it. So let's see how we can work with kind of values that would require a drop down control. uh let's do this and create a enum, and this enum could be a placeholder for now. Placeholder, right? Z enum placeholder. The value we are using still, it's a text field only. And if we go ahead and do this, currently we are not having any enum types, right? But if we just see it at this point, reload this library, no change in structure. Now let's add a change in structure. Let's introduce gender, right? Z enum, give it an array, values, male, female, other, right? Gender, right? This is available here also, if you want to look at it. So now gender is a enum type. As soon as this library is gonna encounter this gender, it's gonna look up for a control that can sufficiently represent this value, right? Currently we're not having one, right? So what we could do now is we can create another control, which is gonna be a drop down control, and for that we'll have to just, let's duplicate this at this point and let's call it drop down field, and use this drop down field over here, drop down field. But how our control is gonna receive these values, right? You must be wondering, right? We have something called enum values, right? So for now, let's just do away with this. We'll have something called an enum value, and for this one, let's just directly use this value. Now this inner values will have every enumeration you have defined for the gender prop, right? It needs to be converted to a drop down. So this sort of a structure is going to be necessary for representing this particular field. Let's just duplicate it. Right, and we're going to enumerate over the inner values, right? Remove this, loop over the inner values, map, inner value, and let's just use the value as is. Let's just do away with this static value, inner value, and inner value. Cool. When there's not gonna be any value, so enum values map, enum value, cool. So this is the default option list for us, right? What about the scenario where there's not going to be any value for us? For that, we'll have something like not field value. What if there's no value, right? The placeholder scenario. For that, you can have something like option value equal to 0 and put select options, right? 3 dots. Okay. So now the list is sufficiently represented. For changing or receiving the values, we'll use the same format as the one we used before, right? For text field. Uh, and then we'll have to just let's copy this for the select control, right? Field value. So field value could be there or could not be there, right? So we'll have to do something like field value or 0. And for change application, we'll have to again just use the same format. On change, field on change, target value, nothing different than the previous structure. Error message will also not change. And now we have a drop down field mapped to a control that takes enumeration as a value, right? It's all defined. Let's just see if uh, this is getting used properly. We have the label being passed for name, we have the label being passed for address. Drop down at this point doesn't receive any custom props, so TypeScript is all happy. And just adding this to our schema, this to our schema will let us render a drop down, right? So this is our option list. We have male, female, and other and all the things here, right? So the select options, male, street. Let's just type any random character, 1 2 3 4 5. Submit. It's all working. Let's just look at the console value there. Name, gender, male. The value is all there, right, for us to use. So you see how simple it is to kind of configure and represent simple form elements as well as something like drop down with this library. All you need to do is define your controls once, like you have this address field and you have this drop down field, right? Every control kind of managed in a self-contained manner. We have now 3 components that represent the 3 different use cases of our form. And once those components are available, we have a structure that tells what's our type, can have what sort of a component mapped to it, and then a schema that represents the shape of your data, which can be passed on to your form as the schema. If you have a prop, you'll pass it. If there's no prop, there's no need to pass it, and you'll have a pretty kind of easily maintainable form at your disposal. So you remember, to make this work, we actually got rid of the label, right? Now, just to kind of walk you through the actual use case, it was okay to do, but why would you not like to have a label in there, right? So let's just get the structure back. Let's just have something like a interface address field or drop down field props. Let's remove this. Let's just pass this on props, drop down props, and use it over here, props label true, props label false, empty. Okay, now what about the values now, right? So for that, this library again ships with quality of life improvement, which is use enum values, right? It's a hook available right out of the library. You can just come here and you can do something like enum values equal to use enum values. Let's just import it and save it, right? Since we provided the label, we'll have to configure the label now for the drop down field, which is gender. Label gender type script seems all happy now. Let's just look at the form. That's good. It's all working. There's just one more thing this library has got up its sleeve, and let's see what it is. So far we have passed this label every time. We were supposed to pass a prop that was a required prop, right? But can this be simplified? Yes, it can be simplified. So this library has a way to kind of access and extract values out of your schema. And what it lets us do is wherever you have defined your props in the actual schema, you can have a describe where you can tell about the label, right? You can have something like describe name and describe gender, and in the address field schema, this one we are not passing any labels. It was sort of a custom one, but let's go here also and let's call it street, and then let's call this zip code, right? Now what we will be able to do with this library is we can use this hook, which is called use description, within our controls, which will let us access this very information and use the same schema that has defined the shape of our data, also define the labels, right? So let's just look at our components and see how this particular value can be accessed, right? Just to const label equal to use description, and let's be done away with props label. Similarly, we'll change every component where you have used this property and we'll refactor it. Props label, right? Drop down is changed now. In address, we are not using any custom label at this point, so there won't be a need to change it at this point. Just let's see how this works, right? So for this too, we were able to tell that we're going to be using the one that's made available through this hook. So let's just do away with this requirements for these two fields, right? So for text field, what we do is we'll remove this requirement altogether. Right, it's not needed. It always rendered a text, right? No problem with that. Label is now extracted out of use description. Similarly for drop down props, label is not required anymore, so we'll do away with this props. Let's remove this one, and address field, let's just leave it like that for now, and let's just remove this two declaration. TypeScript seems all happy now. We have a text field that uses all of the library provided hooks like use TS controller and use description. No external props requirement. Dropdown field is also using the hooks provided by this library, and the schema is all right. The structure is all right. Let's just save it and see this in action. Let's just save the values. Name is available, gender is available, everything is working as it was supposed to work, right? So over the course of last two videos, this one and the previous part one video, you notice how this library simplifies your approach, your workflow towards building custom and complex forms in React. I hope I've been able to educate you, enlighten you on this topic, and you'd be able to make something awesome out of it. See you in my next video. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a great time ahead.